For our group project, we did case study number 2, and in the group was Lindsay Owens, Chrissy Gaines, Natasha McMurray, and Darlene West. I am a nurse working in the ICU with 2 other nurses. My shift is an 8-hour shift because I need to catch my plane to head to a seminar. The other 2 nurses are both 12-hour shifts, and we all have high acuity patients. As I wrap up my 8-hour shift, the oncoming nurse comes in for a report to relieve me so I can catch my plane. One patient has a fever of unknown origin and is in an isolation room with suspected meningitis, and my other patient is a multiple trauma victim. The oncoming nurse disclosed that she recently found out that she is pregnant and states, "I can't take care of a possible meningitis patient. I have to trade with one of the 12-hour shift nurses." So with that in mind, I go to one of the 12-hour shift nurses and explain the situation, and then the 12-hour shift nurses say, "We took care of all kinds of patients when we were pregnant, and we are not changing patients with just 4 hours left in our shift." So I go back and relay the message to the oncoming nurse who is requesting a patient change, and she says they are going to trade patients or she is going to go home. With this in mind, I called staffing to request another nurse to come cover me so I can catch my plane, and they responded saying that there are no nurses that can be called in, and all the other units are short-staffed.
The situation between the oncoming pregnant nurse and the charge nurse falls under interpersonal conflict. Interpersonal conflict occurs when 2 or more people have differing values, goals, and/or beliefs. This difference of opinions can be based on emotions and feelings, or they can be based and centered on issues and events. In the situation, the pregnant nurse coming on shift refuses to take care of the patient with suspected meningitis, while the remaining 12-hour shift nurses do not feel that it is fair to trade patients, as they had to take care of patients in isolation when they were pregnant.
The parties were in stage 4, the manifest stage, when the oncoming nurse, however, says either they trade or I go home, and there's no personnel to cover on call. That's when the scenario moved to stage 5, conflict aftermath. This is because the conflict now could potentially have negative results for the facility if they're unable to find some way to satisfy both parties to where the conflict can be resolved. Otherwise, they could potentially cause the oncoming nurse to go home, and if she goes home, then they're even more short-staffed than what they were before.
Should a manager intervene? What must they do before intervening? Stage 1, the latent conflict. Before the situation gets out of control, and it looks like nurses' emotions are already in this scenario. So stage 3, the felt conflict. And the manager must first analyze the appropriateness of intervening.
The goal for conflict resolution is to allow everyone involved in the conflict to have their voices and concerns be heard. According to Marquise and Huston, the optimal goal in resolving conflict is creating a win-win solution for all involved. However, a win-win solution for conflict is not always possible, so ultimately lessening the perceptual differences between each party is essential in these conflict resolution scenarios.
The most appropriate conflict resolution strategy for this situation would be collaboration. Collaboration involves conscious effort and shared responsibility from both parties to set aside their original goals and work as a team to come up with a common goal that meets the needs of both parties. In addition, each party will gain a sense of accomplishment in the midst of reaching a common priority goal. I chose collaboration as a means of conflict resolution because the emphasis remains on finding a solution to the problem rather than defeating the other party. Mutual respect, open communication, and shared decision-making are essential in order to achieve a common goal through collaboration.
For this particular situation, the nurse manager could see if one of the 12-hour nurses would be willing to switch patients with the oncoming nurse. She could talk to them individually, even though they had, as a front, said no. She could try individually speaking with each of the 12-hour nurses to possibly come up with a solution. This would be accommodating because the manager would be attempting to soothe over the situation with no possible victory. Another idea would be telling the oncoming nurse she had to keep her patient for the 4 hours until the next 12-hour nurse come on, and then she could switch patients with them. This would be two different types of conflict resolution strategies. It would be collaborating because both nurses would win. The 12-hour nurses would not have to trade, and the oncoming nurse would end up getting a new patient after a short period of time and not have to have the patient with meningitis. It could also fall under compromise because the oncoming 8-hour nurse would have to give a little to get what she wanted. She would have to sit with the patient for 4 hours to end up getting a new patient for the rest of her shift. It's always good to have open communication with conflict resolution because it can assist in solving conflicts.
Situation that one can foresee a conflict is about to elevate. The first thing I would do is a silent prayer, a quick scoping or analyzing before saying anything. In order to deactivate an elevated scenario means bringing in some calmness too. Give all parties a chance to give their input, maybe one-on-one. Next would be working on a solution, and with this calmness in the air, maybe someone has changed their mind and decided to change, switch, or work in the area.
Conflict resolution is of great importance in the healthcare field. When a conflict arises, it is important to understand my own stance on the problem, then listen to the others' insights, perspectives, thoughts, and opinions to get all the information. Using compromising and collaborating in tough situations or smoothing in minor situations as conflict resolution techniques is a positive approach to reaching a solution. These techniques will aid me in my practice with conflicts that arise between myself, coworkers, or patients.
Conflict resolution is an effective way of coming to an agreement between two parties. In order to achieve conflict resolution, I plan to actively listen and practice effective communication with my future patients, family members, and coworkers.
For me, open communication is a good policy to have. I like to talk things out during conflicts and try to come to a solution that works well for everyone involved.
And then here are our references.